completed 10 rows, and that achieves the desired width of my headband or ear warmer. And so we're ready to clip the end of the yarn. And to finish, all we do is yarn over and pull the yarn all the way through and pull tight, and that completes our row, and we're finished and we're ready to begin to seam our headband or ear warmer. To do our headband, we're going to need to join it to make that circle to go around our head. There's several ways to do this. One way was the slip stitch that was shown to you in the slip stitch video, and this way of joining just uses a simple yarn needle, and you can do your joining just with the needle as if you were sewing. I am once again using the tail to do this, and that's because it helps to weave in these edges, and I'm going to show you how to do some weaving in here in just a moment. And hides it while we finish, so I like doing that as a finishing technique. You could slip stitch and mount a new thread if you don't have a long tail or a long enough tail to do this. And so with a yarn needle you would go across and be even, be consistent, match it up stitch for stitch across until you have a nice seam at the end. The pattern will often have you weave in the ends at the end of the pattern, and that's a finish that gives a more professional look to your work. You don't want these scraggly ends hanging off, and so we want to be able to weave them in and get them out of the way in a nice, unobtrusive way. And so what we do is we'll use our yarn needle and we'll take our end and just weave it through the, in this example, through the seam. All right. If you wanted a very, very secure type of finish, you might come back the other direction. Just make sure it's not visible on the other side. I'm on the seam side, so I don't want it to show on this side. And then we'll just pull it very tightly and snip up close, and the tail will kind of disappear when we pull it out a little bit. And that is how you weave in your ends. The seam has been joined, and at this point you could say that your headband is completed. I did 10 rows and I tried it on, and it's the correct diameter to fit around my head. And I used a slip stitch to do the seam to join it, and we could call it ready to go. You can also at this point make some adjustments so that you wouldn't have to take out your work and start all over again. You might have seen some of the examples at the beginning where some of the people chose perhaps to do a gather. Maybe the headband was a little bit too wide and they want to bring a narrow point or just to add a bit of a gathered look to their headband for a finish. Now to do that, you go ahead and fan this to pull it together, and then take your yarn needle and thread and simply go through the middle with your thread and around. You can do this one or more times all the way through. Go to the underside and join that together, probably with a knot, but on the underside so that it can't be seen, and be discreet. Do tuck your edges away so they're not visible. I've also had students that went ahead and did somewhat of a wrap with the thread as a finish, which is another possibility. I want you to put your own individual touches, and then the finish is where we can do some of that. One of the great things about crochet is that you have an automatic delete button. So don't worry if you make a mistake or you don't like what you've done. You can always take out your hook and pull the yarn, and you can pull out your work to the point where you want to redo it. You can even pull it all the way out. So you have many chances to give it a try, so don't worry if it's not turning out the way you want, or that if you make a mistake, you can correct all of your work. And this works for any of our stitches and even our slip knot. We can use finishing techniques to make adjustments after we've completed our ear warmer. For instance, perhaps you've completed your ear warmer and you find that it's just a little bit too tight to go around your head. What we can do, instead of joining, let's make some loops so that we can weave our thread back and forth through and give us a little extra room, and we can adjust it wider. So to do this, we're going to use the stitches that you've already learned and you already know. So I've come to the end of the row here, and I'm just going to turn and go right down the side. And slip stitch is a very nice finishing stitch. If you're going to go down the edge, it makes it a nice even edge, and you would go evenly across. But I'm going to make some loops so that we can weave our thread through. So I'll come around the edge. I'm going to do a slip stitch. Remember the slip stitch? We pull the loop all the way through the loop on the hook. And then I'm going to chain, let's chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And then I will slip stitch into the next opening. Then we're going to chain 3 again. 1, 2, 3. We're going to go ahead and slip stitch. We're going to do this all the way across. Going to slip stitch, chain 3, and we're doing our last slip stitch up the side. And so now we have some loops here that we can use to weave a thread back and forth across. We're going to go ahead and do this across the opposite side, just as we've done here. I'm going to use this pink yarn as a tie, and that can be done, I think, with a simple chain stitch. And that's what we will use to lace up the headband and allow it to be adjusted a little bit larger. All right, I think this is long enough, so I'll go ahead and what we call fasten off. Now we'll pull the yarn all the way through and fasten off. Here you can see how loops and lacing can give you some room to make this a little larger and stretchier. If we needed to make this a little bit tighter, then we could use our loops and then sew some buttons and attach the headband a little tighter and adjust it that direction for a better fit. The important thing to remember is to use your imagination and your style and your creativity and make it all your own. Please remember to post a photo of your project so I can see your work and so we can share it with others. Let's see what you can do.